Welcome. I'm very happy to have Ray Sidney-Smith from W3 Consulting. I had the great pleasure of talking to him a couple of weeks ago. And as many of us have struggled to understand how cloud software is being sold, resold, promoted, managed right on the streets directly with small businesses using agencies, consultants, resellers, I found Ray's insights to be amazing, and I thought I wanted to share with everyone. So, I'm glad to have you here. So thank you very much, Ray, for joining us.
Thanks so much, Sunir.
So tell me about yourself. You have a, everyone has their own model, I think, in this world, but you have a particularly unique model. You're doing a bunch of different businesses. So just tell us a little bit about yourself in the context.
Sure. So as a digital marketing strategist, my goal is to help as many small business owners as I can. And so our business model is actually focused on helping small business development centers spread that information to the small business clients directly. So I actually work on behalf of small business development centers. They're my clients, and I provide those services to small businesses, typically free of cost because the SBDCs are paying me for my services. So the other services that we provide are really tangential. They're correlative to our primary services, which is helping small businesses understand how to market and manage on the web using web, mobile, and social media technologies.
And so, yeah, you're doing training. You're doing what as SaaS vendors like to call reselling. You're setting up and managing software on customers' behalf, and you're funded in a novel way because you're funded through the SBC. And so your motivations are kind of multiple, but I think that's pretty normal. I mean, when you get down to the real business models, when people are working with small businesses, you often find multiple tracks. Did you end up getting into this, like building these models organically, or did you plan for this from the beginning, or how did you get from zero to where you are now?
Yeah, this was very organic. The model wasn't decided upon originally to look the way it does right now. As you said, our workshop and seminar business was supposed to be, half of the business, and the other half would be providing services directly to small business owners and privately, not within the SBDC structure or within other economic development agencies that hire us. And it turned out that wanting to stay as nimble as possible, as flexible as possible, we needed to have a better way to manage our clients, and the better way to manage our clients was to not have as many. So we just decided that it was better to go after the SBDCs and work, partner with them to be able to provide the services to the farthest, and the largest community. So our workshops and seminars ended up becoming part of the package we offered to the SBDCs to provide to the direct, small business owners, and that's just kind of how it grew. But it was definitely an organic process.
So you're not just providing training; you're also managing. Some of these people end up becoming your clients directly, and you're managing services on their behalf. And you mentioned you have a very specific set of services that you're willing to support directly. Which products are you selling?
Right. So we're GoDaddy reseller partners specifically because we wanted to be able to help small business owners who didn't know anything about setting up a website. They needed hosting, they needed the ability to handle email, register domains, that kind of thing. And so that was a natural extension of our services from the get-go. So we became GoDaddy reseller partners. And along the way, I became certified in pretty much every Google product I could get certified in, and eventually became the Google Small Business Advisor for Productivity. And that led us to wanting to resell G Suite. In 2015, I believe it is, I became an Evernote certified consultant, and a lot of our small business owners are interested in business productivity and productivity tools, and Evernote is a fantastic tool. So I decided to become a certified consultant there. So we resell Evernote and help implement Evernote Business into businesses. And so we became a reseller for them. And then Hootsuite. I'm a Hootsuite Global Brand Ambassador. And again, this is all kind of centered on being a small business evangelist of a kind, right? So my goal is always to bring to small businesses the best tools I can for the small business arena. And so this suite of products kind of came together organically as well for that purpose.
It sounded like you added each one as you were meeting like direct demand from customers. Is that right?
Absolutely. Yeah, they all came from the fact that we started having to, do workshops or seminars on these products specifically because there was a demand. And then we just, kind of went from there. We said, okay, well, this is something that we can continue to help implement within businesses when they need more bespoke training than just one that I can give to, 75 or 100 people in a room together.
So it's very common, people in your situation, I don't know if you experienced this, vendors are like hammering consultants, agencies, whatever right now. You get like, a lot of people I talk to get a call like every day or two from a vendor or get some email soliciting them. I mean, I don't know, is that your experience as well?
Repeat the question. So what's...
So often people in your situation are being solicited by the vendors as well. Like you decided which vendors from your customer demand, but often the vendors are making demands on you. I mean, are you experiencing that as well?
Yeah, no, especially once you're inside of particular marketplaces, like GrowSumo or any number of those kinds of reseller marketplaces. Once you're in the list, they seem to want to remarket you to other vendors who might want you. And as soon as someone knows that you're a reseller for one particular product, you'll be approached by others for it.
So what's your reaction? I mean, it seems like you're not taking on new vendors unless you have customer demand. A lot of them have no demand.
No, and I've been approached by several major reseller coordinators and managers who want us to join, and the reality is that they don't fit our client base. The number of people who come to me for certain big products that I'm not naming names, but a lot of those big products, they just don't fit my small business clients. That's just a reality. And we've been burned. We've attempted to try and set up programs around a particular reseller partner, and they just don't work, because of any number of reasons. And we'll get into some of the hiccups and challenges that we face today with our current programs, notwithstanding. But we make them work because we know that the client has a need. Our end clients have needs. But the reality is that most often they don't work because there's a fundamental flaw in the program itself that doesn't allow us to be able to retain and protect the relationship, or it fundamentally just doesn't even work. The commission structure doesn't work for the amount of time spent. Many of those things come into play.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much here to touch upon. One thing though, before we get into the reseller programs, is like it sounds like you do have other customer needs that you haven't met or fulfilled, but yeah. We talked about it a little bit before, but like, what is stopping you from going beyond like 5 core products? It seems like there's thousands of products that your customers use, but you're not. And you can manage them.
Yeah, so many products that I would otherwise resell, there isn't a program. Managing and retaining the client relationship is really important for us because many of our clients are, say, they're baby boomers or they're technologically unsavvy. And our whole goal is to teach people technology, and not just teach them technology, but to embed technology into their operations, their small business operations. So if they're marketing and managing their business and they're not using the right technology, they're set up for failure. And our goal is to flip that on its head, right? And so many times people don't want to deal with the implementation of that technology, and they also don't want to deal with the payment of that technology, certainly through an intermediary. And so we don't, because there just isn't a seamless way to coordinate all of those pieces together in one seamless process. So we just go in.
So like when you deal with those vendors, this is a common theme. This is probably the most common theme that I've heard, is that people in your situation want to maintain control of the client relationship. And sometimes people think on the vendor side of the table is that, well, they're kind of being like protective of the client relationship. But, I talked to you, it sounds like it's the other way around. The client is more protective of their relationship with you. Like they need you. They don't necessarily want to deal with the vendors. And that's what we talked about a little bit. Like, what's the disconnect? Like when you're talking to a vendor, when you talk to a customer and yourself, like what is not working in this conversation from each side?
Well, I think from the vendor side, it's an understanding of the fact that I'm providing ongoing services to this client. They are my ward in that sense. And they usually have limited capacity to be able to deal with any number of things, better yet, coordinating among multiple vendors. And so if I'm providing a particular service, which is usually training that person on the software that they're using, them going to say technical support or contacting billing support or those kinds of things outside of our relationship ends up muddying the water, and many times sets them back, because now they go, oh, well, I went to support and they told me how to do X and Y and I didn't understand, so I'm frustrated with the software, so I don't want to use it anymore. And we get that quite frequently, and this is outside of our reseller relationship, right? So I have nothing to do with, reselling these products. And that creates a huge problem for those software vendors, because they're not providing the very customized, personalized training that we give. It's, you want to call it hand-holding, whatever you want to call it, but the point is that the community that I'm serving, some of them need that for again, lack of technical savvy, and also just sort of generational lack of digital, desire for digital, adoption. And they know it's important for their business, but they don't want to deal with that. And so we're there filling in that gap that I'm certain that many of the vendors that we work with don't want to deal with, which is why we exist. And by them not, by the others not embracing that model of having someone who can really do that, it really hurts them. One good example I believe that we can use is kind of Infusionsoft. Infusionsoft has taken this role. Was it actually you who told me this, that Infusionsoft? I can't remember where I heard this.
Yeah, they did a keynote at the conference, and they said they now made a major strategic change where they're going to focus on partner success over customer success.
You got it.
And in so much as now, I think every new customer is on board. They don't do it themselves anymore. I think that's what I understood.
Yeah, I think that's a great example of a company that is aware of where they can begin and end, with regard to really providing a great experience for their people, is having, this sort of intermediary place where the boots on the ground, the people like me who are interacting and engaging with those people on a daily basis, can really be more helpful to them than them getting tech support on the line or on chat and being frustrated with them because they're not getting the kind of personalized experience that they should be.
Well, actually, this is one more line on this, because you told me some interesting stories. You mentioned baby boomers in your framing, and so I think that's a lot of it. Like a lot of your customers need you because they need a human next to them, whereas tech support teams are measured on trying to get rid of the customer as fast as possible, even those who are super friendly, like they have to get volume. But you're spending time. So do you have like a story of when, I think you had a good story about an Evernote customer. I think that illustrates like they needed you somehow involved. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, so I've several Evernote customers who are high-level executives, and they are in need of someone who can really work with them to structure their systems so that they can, one, be productive, but two, just get around the system because they're just not aware of how that all works. And and we're kind of hands are tied in a lot of ways. So for example, Evernote's privacy policy restricts us in being able to have access to a user's accounts, username and credentials. So we have to have really creative workarounds so that I can help this person who, in a high level, fast-paced environment, I need to be able to step in and correct things so that, operations can continue. He's in charge of quite a large organization. So, these are the kinds of experiences that just understanding the nature of what we do, or what I do as an Evernote certified consultant, is really tantamount to being able to provide a seamless experience as a reseller partner. And so,
wait, so you said Evernote does not allow the customer to designate an agent enter their own account.
That's correct. The only way that I would have control over someone's account is by notebook. And so, a notebook being the kind of one of the units of structure within Evernote. So I can't have the username and password of that account. So if something were to go wrong with his account, I wouldn't be able to do that. So, other ECCs and myself have come up with creative ways to be able to work around that, so we don't have access to that kind of information, using password managers, where they share the access to the platform without actually sharing with us credentials, things of that nature.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still trying to wrap my head around legally how that's even a thing, because it's the customer's data and their system, and the customer would have the rights to their own information, how it's used. And legally, you're allowed to designate an agent or power of attorney to anybody who wants to take any action. But maybe, I mean, that's just their policy. Maybe it doesn't, it's just a little bit of a hiccup in their system. But that's an interesting little bit of friction.
So Evernote's not impeding that the user from being able to share those credentials with us. As Evernote certified consultants, we are agreeing to not use them. To not hold them, use them. So that's my understanding. I'm not Evernote's legal team, so I can't determine their position on this. But from my perspective, it obviously is a space where it hasn't. Maybe they do understand that, but very well possible they understand that it's going to annoy and block some of the work that needs.
But
to be
they might
done.
have had problems in the past, right? But it is hard. It makes it harder for you to be for your role. So that's
Absolutely.
A little bit of it.
Yeah, no, it's certainly something that we constantly are in conflict with. If an Evernote business installation is put in, we're not allowed to be an Evernote business administrator. So we have to work with the EBA on site. Sometimes that person is not technologically savvy or just doesn't know how Evernote works, even though they may be technologically savvy, digitally savvy. They certainly don't know how Evernote Business works, and so administering the program for an entire company becomes burdensome. And unfortunately, that means me having to be there on site or using remote software to log in and work on that person's computer so that I don't have access to their login credentials, just for the purposes of making sure that the privacy policy is intact on the Evernote side.
Oh, it's fascinating. It's a unique situation, and I'm going to wrap my head around that one.
Yeah,
and maybe I'll ask Evernote
definitely
more about it later. So how do the other reseller programs compare? They must all be a little bit different. I mean, G Suite, GoDaddy, Hootsuite, WordPress. And we know about Evernote. Just walk me through, how does a reseller program work from your point of view for GoDaddy and Hootsuite, G Suite?
Yeah, so GoDaddy is probably the most seamless of them all. I really have to commend them on a number of points. The front end ability to white label and have your own interface, and now even with the ability to have a WordPress installation where you connect to the GoDaddy API, the reseller API, and so you can draw in all the data you need and really manifest in it in a front end environment that works for you. And now you have a lot more control over it being a part of the services you provide to your clients, and not the whole front end is managed by GoDaddy. But they've worked very hard to make that program work well. But there's still little hiccups. I recently had an issue with a client who they enabled two-factor authentication, and I'll preface this with the fact that this is not so much GoDaddy's fault, but mind you, the problem still exists, right? The person has two-factor authentication enabled. He or she loses the phone and no longer recovers the number. GoDaddy then requires the users, they've agreed to this in their terms of service when they signed up for the account with us, that they would provide this form with a government-issued ID in order to regain access to the account. And unfortunately, the user doesn't want to give their government-issued ID, so they're locked out of their account, but their credit card continues to get charged. And what I've learned over time is that when that situation happens, and unfortunately it happens way too often, is that the individual then is required to go into their bank and have their bank cards canceled and, all of that nonsense that they have to go through in order to stop this one particular charge. And GoDaddy won't talk to me. They have no, I have no,
of course they can't.
For that. So,
they don't know who you are. I mean, so they can't.
Yeah.
It's a government issue ID is the owner. They can't. It's for a good reason.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's a gray area. Obviously, it's very difficult for people to manage. One way that I've kind of worked through it is to get that documentation up front if they are going to enable two-factor authentication. But that has been in a very rare circumstance because the user is literally, of a particular age where they just don't understand what's going on. And, if they want the security, they need the security, then we'll talk to them about other options. But, I've all but said to everyone in complete counter, productive use, don't use 2FA if you don't want to give your government issued ID to regain access to your account, which in essence makes their accounts less secure. And, and I don't particularly know if the access to the government issued ID is any more secure, faxing or emailing that to GoDaddy. I don't, not that I distrust GoDaddy in the sense of sending them your ID to verify who you are, but there's got to be a better way. Actually, LinkedIn does I think it's LinkedIn, they do a really interesting job of using an external service that you go on video and you verify your ID, you hold up your government issued ID for someone, and they are live verifying it for you so that you don't have to have documentation that's being sent insecurely across the internet.
Yeah, I mean, there's services like Jumio is probably what they're using. It's pretty interesting. I was told a side note. I mean, I'm very interested in this particular space. But what was very interesting, I was talking to all these 2FA. Now in the United States, as well, all the data has been breached. So all your personal information is effectively available on the black market. And so like your social security number, phone number, address, and everything. And so it's just one more little, so everyone's going more, it's just that war of it's an arms race. So, now the TFA is getting harder. It becomes harder for people in the middle to log in. Just one more thing, right? That, we in the digital age have to contend with. It's, makes 2018 very interesting.
Oh, yeah.
What's 2019? Yeah. What about Hootsuite? How do they work for you?
So the way in which we operate with Hootsuite is they're, they work really well. I've not actually had any problems with Hootsuite. Again, they don't provide any white label program or anything like that. It would be really ideal if they did something like a white label, so that we can, again, it's about being able to manage and control the relationship. And so we just have to hand them off to the client so that they can set up their accounts and all that other stuff, and then hopefully the client, in our case, we're fairly protective of our clients, only because they're coming through us through a relationship-based system. So we already have a relationship with that person, so I don't have that problem with bringing those people back to us after they've set up an account or otherwise. But the reality is that if you are you're in essence just doing an affiliate program with Hootsuite otherwise. So it's a real difficulty, because there is just no way to manage otherwise. So I don't know. It's fairly weird for me, because I'm so used to how we handle our clients internally, that the idea of handing our clients away to a vendor always seems odd, especially since we have confidentiality, agreements and all these other things. We have to jump through more hoops because of the confidentiality, requirements that we have within most of our relationships with our customers.
And then your customers, did they ever, first, how long does it take them, for instance, to set up a Hootsuite? Is it quick, or they take long? Sometimes it varies.
It depends. I recently had a customer who had such a difficult time. And again, this is about generational gap and adoption of technology. But this person had a tremendously difficult time setting up both G Suite and Hootsuite. And so I had to step in both cases and then I had to have a staff member step in another case because it just was almost impossible for them to get around, setting this stuff up. And unfortunately, I wish that, like, for example, with G Suite, we had the ability to step in and without her having to email me passwords and all this other nonsense to be able to gain access to her account. I don't have a dashboard where I can just, have access to those client points. And, it's like setting up DNS. I believe that before she came across this problem, she probably didn't know what DNS was, right? And so, it's like, how do you begin to explain to someone that information when in reality it should have been kind of push button for me on our side?
Well, they hired you to handle it, right? That's the thing that's confusing, right?
Exactly. But I have to hand off the relationship to them first, so they can then come in, create the account and then send me credentials so that I can go ahead and work on it. And so, yeah, there are challenges there.
I love the irony it's actually a lot of security, but the harder the security is, the more people get around it by like throwing passwords around in the clear to each other.
Exactly.
Right? The more the insecure the human side, the harder it is for humans, the more insecure the humans will make it. And it's, in this case, because they made it so hard, harden you out, the middle party out of the equation, right? Then the person who actually wants you involved has to circumvent the security and basically make the system insecure so that you can use it.
Right. And I've tried with almost all of our clients, especially ones that are susceptible to high-end attacks because of either their contact database is lucrative, they work in a high-level position. We've been working very, very hard to educate them all about making sure they have password managers, so that they can seamlessly share that kind of information with us out the gate. But it still creates, even more complexity. And I don't believe that's any reseller's fault. You know what I mean? I think this is we're in a growth phase. We're all going to have to kind of mature in the way in which we manage access, but certainly figuring out how to work better so that I don't need people's credentials. I need access to their account so that I'm able to help them. And that's the kind of...
You need second authorization rights. I mean, that could be revocable by the customer, right?
Absolutely. And GoDaddy has done that now. I mean, GoDaddy has done a really good job of giving us, access to our client accounts from within our own account. So that's been actually really, really great access, delegation of access functionality they've built into it. And it gives us, different grades of access, so for some clients, I make purchases on their behalf, and now I can do that really easily within their account. They give us particular delegated access so they can go ahead and just, manage the products, manage their WordPress installation, manage their calendar, or whatever other products they have with us. And that's been really, really helpful. Again, the end result is that we create the account for the client up front and then send them the username and password after we've given ourselves delegated access. And of course, we're telling them that we're doing this. We're not doing this, of course, without their permission. But it's just so that they don't have to do that, because it's just for me to explain to somebody how to go in and delegate access when they're, not even aware.
Okay, what does that even mean?
Yeah, exactly.
What are you talking about, nerd? Yeah, I know.
Right. It becomes a terminology issue, and they get overwhelmed, and so we just walk them through it. And sometimes I'm sitting there with them, so it's not like it's just me doing it instead of them doing it. But it ends up being 15 minutes instead of being 3 hours. So it's just a cost averaging.
One thing you said, it's not the vendor's fault, I think is something I'm going to underscore. A lot of times I've talked to people, maybe not necessarily on the partner team, but on the security team, and they're blaming the middle party, the third party, yourself, like the consultants, for circumventing security, making things insecure. But what they don't understand is that by forcing so much control on the vendor side, they're forcing, because this is the law of computer science, information security. The more hard you make it at one control point, the rest of the system has to loosen up in order to make the solution happen.
It's a path of least resistance issue. You know what I mean? As I think you said it earlier, you're always going to find people circumventing through the path of least resistance, and they'll go through actually great lengths to overcome security for convenience. And it's something that will, at least in the InfoSec and in the cybersecurity space, is going to have to constantly be dealt with.
Yeah. So this sounds like really complicated. These are all different models. So some are white labeled, some are referral, some you have to remote desktop in, some they have a portal, but you can't actually buy and set up. These are all different.
Yep.
So it's complicated. But what would be your ideal scenario? I mean, you could build anything in computer science, but what would you do?
Well, ideally, we would have a dashboard where people would be able to manage that front end experience. I would love to basically have, a location for our customers to be able to manage both billing, but also access to their own services. And that would allow us to be able to really manage the relationship from the front end so that, they were not, people are suspicious, right? If I send them off to some, frequently I send people off to Hootsuite, for example, and now they're on the Hootsuite website. Sure, we're getting the commission and they're going to come back to us, but I frequently get I wasn't particularly comfortable signing up for this service until I asked you more questions because it wasn't on your website, right? And it's like, oh, right, yeah, it redirected you away from the website, and people are uncomfortable with that. And it's something that I hear all the time now, is like, it's not something that I'm uncomfortable with because I'm a digital citizen. I'm very comfortable with, the internet. But for people who are not, they see it as a security risk. And so, legitimate or otherwise, right? And so, so it would be really great to have a one place, one interface, so that customers are just able to be, sign up and buy those services through us with no difference to them on the front end. And then, of course, the other side is that we on the back end would have the ability to administer and manage all of the parts that we need to be able to get the services up and running for them, so that my goal and my job my goal in life is not to sit around and administer the setup of these client accounts. It's to be with them so that I can empower them to use the technology. So the more that background stuff can be handled seamlessly, means the more clients we can handle, right? If my staff is spending 80% of their time needling away trying to make the systems work for our customers, that's less time that they can spend with our customers, having them have a great experience with the software.
Is that the ratio? Is it 80-20? 80 on admin?
No, it's probably not quite that high, but it's probably high 60s.
Oh my gosh, super inefficient. And that's just to get these subscriptions are not a lot of money. So how much labor time are you spending to sell like a $20 subscription or whatever?
Yeah, so I have a full-time staff member that's primarily her job, and so we're thankfully turning over enough clients to make it profitable, but I could easily see if there was a mechanism in place to reduce that onboarding. Basically she's an onboarding specialist, and that's all she does is deal with the inefficiency of the systems, if you want to call it that, if you want to characterize it as that. So it's a huge cost to us, right? Because I could be saving that money and putting it into some other better use.
Yeah, that's all very inefficient. Well, you're trying to butter my bread, I know, a little bit, because obviously I'm working in this space. But do you use things like Okta or anything like that, or you said LastPass? Are you using anything in between?
Yeah, so we do heavily use LastPass, although some of our clients use other password managers, so we do use those in small scale. But we do use LastPass as our primary mechanism for being able to share and access passwords across systems. And again, it's also for us, we want to make sure that we're providing the most secure environment, for our customers, and so we use LastPass.
Is there anything else you use?
Nope, that's it.
And then for billing, how is that working? What are you using for that?
Yeah, so unless that we have a very special circumstance, we take all things over the phone and we enter them in, and then we no longer have access to that information. Nobody on staff is allowed to even write down any of that information, because it's not secure.
So every time you upgrade an account, you have to go call the customer instead of a phone call.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, we take everything ephemerally, so that, you know, one, the systems, you know, stay PCI compliant, and you know, and so we're always taking everything over the phone, which is incredibly inefficient, but it's the most secure for us because it keeps honest people honest, right? You know, I don't want my staff, you know, feeling empowered to walk away with anyone's credit card information. As much as possible, I want our clients self-manage their billing information. So I will have our billing team actually call them and walk them through entering their own credit card information in themselves, so that, you know, we don't have to. But it takes time. You know, it's all time on the phone with people that we could otherwise be being more productive with.
Yeah, I'm sure also they would prefer you just to get on with it. So.
Absolutely, they'd rather us plug it in once and then not have to think about it again.
So before we wrap it up, I mean, for me, it just makes me want to work harder because this problem is so solvable.
Yeah.
I feel, I mean, I'm pushing this out to the entire trade association. So there's vendors, there's resellers, there's channels. There's lots of people trying to work on this problem. I still feel there's a giant gap and chasm between SaaS vendors and consultants like yourselves. If you had one like core message you could put out to them about how to treat you better, what would it be?
It's about communicating. I mean, you know, one of the core problems I find is that, you know, frequently the way to access your vendor, the vendor partner, is via an email address that's a bulk email address. You send it out and hope that somebody ever responds, and not seeing, you know, you get all kinds of, I'm sure that they get all kinds of really wonky requests, but when a reseller reaches out and says that they need some kind of integration to make them be able to do less on the back end so they can provide better personalized experiences for the direct customer or the direct client on the back end, I mean, that should that should be something that's really highly valued, and that's the kind of thing that, you know, if you implement, is going to increase your profitability, right? And so it's just always going to increase profitability if you engage and create a better customer experience. And we know that now. You know what I mean? We've seen study after study after study showing that information to us, and yet we don't take the recommendations of, you know, people like me who are on the front lines and really see, okay, well, this is a minor change, it can be implemented. Why wouldn't you do it if you know that it's going to provide you with that much more of a gratified customer, which of course is going to increase my desire to go out there and bring more customers to that vendor.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And the reason is, I think, talking to most people, is there's just a hunger for this information. They just don't have enough conversations. And so, I mean, I truly appreciate you spending the time to like go through, you know, a day in a life, you know, of W3 consulting and yourself and your customers to explain like what's, you know, it's obviously we're at the frontier, but, you know, I think especially for seeing other programs might stack up, I think it would give people a very clear idea of how they could improve and where to focus on. So yeah, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. You're welcome, Sunir.